Hello, everybody. This is Ming Chen,
Hi, I'm Mike Zapsik from AMC's Comic Book Man.
and you're watching AFK, the AFK show, our favorite show on the planet.
One of.
One of. So you're watching the right show. Keep watching, and keep watching.
And keep watching. And keep watching. Don't stop.
Everybody knows Rudy, yes, Rudy Sarzo, of course. You're like, yeah, okay. And nobody knows me, but that's okay too. You were not supposed to nod when you hear that part. My name is Sharon Melton. I have the honor and privilege of sitting next to probably one of the greatest when it comes to musicians out there, who's played with practically everybody. And it is truly an honor to meet you in person.
Thank you
so much for
Thank you.
spending a little time with us today. Now,
Thank
I'm
you
going to
guys
do
for
it this
coming
way
out.
because we have a microphone there for a reason, because you guys are here for a reason. You want to talk to him. You don't want to hear all the questions from me. You want to talk to him. I got a few, though. That's why I get to sit here. So, I mean, first of all, we could start anywhere, because you probably have stories upon stories. You could write 10, 15 different books.
Actually, I wrote one.
Yes, I know. But you can write so many more about either your experiences with different bands and all of that. But just from your perspective, what is the one thing that just comes to mind when you think of being a musician, being the longevity you've had? How is that possible to be able to continue and still be relevant in this day and age?
The greatest joy of being a musician for me is freedom of expression. Because let's say you're in the studio, and the studio is more of a control environment, because you're working with a producer who kind of like, as let's say a producer will be the version of a director to an actor. There's certain guidelines and certain vision, a bigger picture that the producer has of what the song is about, or the record in general, because back in the day, we used to, they were called albums, which were basically snapshots of where the band or the artist was at that time in their career. So there was usually a thread that ran from every single song on that record. Just like if you do a photo album of you today, every picture is gonna have a certain continuity, because it's where you're at today. And then if you, for example, greatest hits albums, I'm pretty sure you guys have those in your collection. You have snapshots of where the artist has been at certain points in their career, and sometimes they're a little bit disjointed as far as a true representation of what the artist is all about, because it's like a potpourri of different songs and different points of the artist in their career, So once you get up on stage, that's where truly the freedom of expression begins, because rarely do you play the same way every single night. You're feeding off a different audience. When I perform, I usually go out, and if we're headlining, like I've done with most of the bands that I play with, while the opening band is performing, I look at where I'm going to be at and become familiar with the audience, see what they enjoy, see what they like, see what turns them on. So when you hit the stage, there's a familiarity about what you're doing, so you don't have to really settle in, you're ready to go, And that to me, it adds to the whole aspect of freedom of expression, because the less things you have to deal with while you're playing live, the better you can express yourself completely. You know what I mean? So you're not really thinking about, ooh, this person, I don't know if they're going to like the second song that we're playing because it might have a certain beat. No, you heard the band that open up before you do a similar tempo song. You go, oh, they're into it. Okay, good. You know what I mean? So you basically, you look at the audience and you look at their faces, and it's almost like driving a car. You know, if you rev the engine too much, you pull it back a little bit. You know what I mean? Or you go to shift gears, basically, up or down, according to their expression. It is very important to be really, really aware of your audience.
Well, on top of the audience and being able to feed off of just the energy that they give to you as you're playing your music, what is it like when you're switching between different bands? Because you have to feed off of a new group on top of feeding off of the audience, and what kind of freedom are you allowed in one band as opposed to maybe not necessarily in another?
It's not only is that a challenge, but I like yourself, a lot of musicians ask me how I've been able to successfully go from one group to the other, and it's because I tell them my philosophy is that I'm joining the band is not joining me. So you have to really, for example, what I would do is study everything that their catalog previous to me joining the band. I mean, listen to all the original recordings. And nowadays, you can actually go on YouTube and listen to a band, all their bootlegs or whatever, are available on YouTube. So I become a student of the group, respect the legacy of not only the band, but the person that you're replacing, because, that person has moved on for whatever reason. And if it's not me, it's going to be somebody else. So I'm just glad that it's me, the one who's coming in to do it, But they can rest assured that I'm going to respect what they have contributed. And I'm going to treat it with respect, and I'm going to basically almost do an homage to them. But to the point that once I'm settled in, then I can start spreading. It's kind of like when you visit a house, and somebody says, "Oh yeah, you're a guest on our home. Here's your room." Kind of like the first couple of days you don't unpack. You kind of say, "Hey, this is nice." You're feeling your way, and then a week later say, "Well, I like it here. I'm gonna start putting my socks in the drawer and stuff like that." And before you know it, you're opening out the fridge and you make yourself comfortable, And sometimes they even say, "Well, do you like the color of your walls?" "No, I'm going to paint them. I want to change it a little bit." So, the longer you're in a group, the more comfortable you feel, and then actually you start communicating with the other members of the group. So you go from okay, I'm playing what was performed on the record, or what the artist, because, you could be replacing somebody who's been there for 5 years, and I can guarantee you, because I've been in the same spot, that person is not playing exactly what they played on the record. They have, because now, for the last 30 years or so, the recording process has changed from what it used to be back in the 70s, where everybody was recording in the same room at the same time. Now is mostly based on overdubs. So you're going in there, the drummer lays down the drum track, then the bass player comes in and does their thing, the guitar player, blah, blah, blah. So basically, you're kind of piecing everything. Not until you actually go on the road and start playing the song that you start really to understand what the song is about, and really put your heart and soul into the song. So you're going to be playing it different than you actually did on the record.
Gotcha.
So I take all of that into consideration, and then towards a few months into it, I start to really come into my own being in that band and performing the songs, probably with the same progression as the previous musician that have taken their place would be doing.
Now, we're going to go back just a little bit. You talked about going into a house and being able, once you feel comfortable with the band, being able to paint your own colors and all of that without, outing any particular band in particular. But which band do you feel, out of all the ones that you've been in, let you do the most painting, let you be a little bit more of yourself and bring a part of that into the band and incorporate it?
Yeah, they all have to a certain point, because you have to be realistic, with your contributions. You can go overboard because I have played with musicians who have come into the group that I'm in, and they try to change everything. Because let's say it's a musician who's only been in one band, and they only know how to do it their way, one way. They can't really adapt to other situations. So they try to bring whatever they're doing in that band to this band. And a lot of times it doesn't work, you know. And so I'm completely the opposite. You know, I look at it and say, okay, what kind of contribution can I bring to this situation that is going to, you know, be the best that I can be within what we're doing here.
Do you think that's the key to longevity for any musician, especially if they're going to be moving around, to be able to incorporate that and wait till they're ready to accept your contributions?
Adaptability,
on a larger...
yeah. Adaptation is part of the survival to all the species, including musicians.
Where did you get your love for music?
Freedom of expression, love of music.
Well, as a child growing up, where did it come from?
I think that we all, human beings, you know, we at a molecular level, we vibrate. So we are affected by vibrations, and music, to me, it's the ultimate sensory experience of vibration, you know. And that's what really attracted me to it. Because, for example, rock and roll. I got into rock and roll before I even learned English, you know, being Latin, you know. And it was like I felt it. And I understood it by emotion, the emotion of the music. I traveled around the world. I mean, first time I played in Russia was in 1994, right after the curtain, the wall. Yeah. And to watch from the stage, you know, grown men moved. I was in a band. I was in Whitesnake at the time, and we played in St. Petersburg, White Nights Festival. You know, yes. So the sun never goes down. It's like midnight, and it's like, you know, noon. You know. Yeah, and to actually be able to look in the crowd, because it was daylight at 10 o'clock, and see like all those faces crying because for the first time they were experiencing, because of political reasons, rock and roll in their country. They didn't understand what was being sung, but they felt it. It was the emotion, you know, especially blues. I would say that blues-based rock and roll around the world is the most beloved American musical form, that and jazz.
Does it still amaze you, though, that, to me, when I think of music, I think of it as a language. And I know a lot of people think of it as a language. And it's a language that doesn't have to be translated. It's a language that each individual person experiences for themselves based on either their history, their background. Do you feel that, as you mentioned, going to Russia and all of that, do you feel when you are speaking that language, through rock and roll, whatever you're playing, that people get it? Even if they've never heard it before, they get it.
They get it, absolutely. I mean, it's, you nailed it, absolutely. They get it, and to see them getting it is the most rewarding experience you could ever have. Whether they understand the lyrics or not, you know, they will understand the emotion of the music. That's why it's so important to play with musicians that are emotional when they play. They're not just playing numbers, they're actually communicating. I mean, the way that I look at musical instruments, you know, whether it's the voice or any other instrument, is they're instruments of communication.
All right. I want to move it a little to the audience real quick, because trust me, I could ask all day long, but I want you guys to come up, and the microphone's right there. We can bring the microphone to you. Does anybody in the room have any questions they'd like to ask Rudy at this point? You're like, oh, no.
Yeah, come on.
Come on. This is your chance to ask him.
I'll ask something.
Come up close to the mic so everyone can hear you.
Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you for coming.
It's wonderful. I grew up with all the bands that you were in, so definitely influenced by them. I want to ask, early on you just said that you were into rock and roll before you spoke English.
Yeah.
Was it the Beatles, or who was it that started it off, kicked it off for you?
Yeah, the Beatles were, or actually not only the Beatles, but the British invasion, because if the British invasion was just based on the Beatles, it would have never lasted. You know, that would have been a flash in the pan. But just that there was such a musical movement coming in to the United States. And it's interesting because if you look back at what was going on before the Beatles in America as far as rock and roll, with the exception of Motown, was a early period of Motown. As a matter of fact, the Beatles were really influenced by Motown. You know, you had your basic three rock and roll superstars at the time, such as Elvis, Little Richard, and Chuck Berry, or adding another one, Jerry Lee Lewis. They weren't active. You know, Elvis was in the army. Jerry Lee Lewis, he was having certain problems because he married his cousin, who was underage. Yeah, Chuck Berry, I believe, was in jail. And Little Richard became a minister. So there wasn't much of an output of rock and roll during that period, with the exception of Motown. So, in a way, politically, rock and roll was being, oh no, I'm not trying to create a conspiracy theory here, but I think that the society at the time, or the government at the time, had some influence on that. Whereas, when the Beatles came from England, they really couldn't control that. You know, it was, there's all these British guys coming into our country, and there's so many of them. What are we going to do? Well, hey, guess what? They're selling a lot of records. They're playing, they're selling sold-out concerts. Ooh, that's good for the economy. Okay, well, I think, these guys, they have a little bit of long hair, and they're pretty, they're pretty innocent. And then, as history has it, Bob Dylan and the Beatles got together, and Bob Dylan brought in certain influence, from basically smoking pot,
To be honest.
I'm not making it, Google it, And then music, it really got, social political again. And by then, there was so many things going on that were even part of the picture, larger picture, that the 60s turned out to be the most socially significant music that ever came out, was during that time, all the anti-Vietnam War music and social consciousness and civil rights movements and everything. It was like, that was the voice of America, rock and roll music. If you really had something to say, put in a song, and it was going to get on the radio.
What do you think about the voice of music today? Where does it fit into the scheme of things?
The voice of music today.
I mean, does it have the voice that not necessarily like it had in the 60s, but
yeah.
What do you see about music today? Do you like it? Do you not?
We used to have a system back in the day, for better or for worse. We had radio, terrestrial radio. And when I say for better or for worse, it's because of the payola system. That not all of the best songs available got airplay. Sometimes it was, whoever can afford to get airplay, with payola or whatever, And right now, but then again, it's right now we can reach more people through blogging or YouTube or whatever, but it's not centralized. To me, that is the problem. The music industry used to be centralized. You used to walk into a record store, there would be the guy behind the counter playing some new record. You used to go, oh, who's that? Oh, it's so-and-so, David Bowie, whatever. Who's David Bowie? Oh, he aspires from Mars. Oh, okay, I like it. I'm going to take it home with me. There's no record stores anymore. There's no that one guy that I used to go to. Hey, man, what came in this week? What do you recommend? What's new? Oh, the new Allman Brothers record. Oh, wow, cool. Take it home with me, just because I trusted that person, Or even in the day that you pick up labels and the labels like Columbia, whatever, used to do compilations of their new artists. 10 songs from people you never heard of, but it was Columbia. oh my God, it's Colombia. I mean, these guys got to be good because otherwise we won't be getting signed to a record deal, you know. And I mean, there were so many ways that you trusted. You trusted, you know, certain labels, certain producers that were working with artists because, you know, if George Martin produced the band, it had to be quality, you know. So there was that element of, there were places to go to. There were radio, your favorite DJ, you know, your favorite, you know, when I was a kid in Miami, we had this guy, Rick Shaw, who had, you know, every other month used to introduce a new song by either the Rolling Stones or the Beatles at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And he used to tell you, hey kids, stick around, at 3 o'clock we're going to play you this new song by the Beatles, Day in the Life. Wow. And then you listen to it and you're like, oh my God, that is just, and you're just like frozen in front of the radio, you know.
But you had the expert telling you, this is what's out there.
It was centralized.
And it was centralized.
Yeah, it was centralized.
Gotcha.
And we, you know, right now you go on YouTube and you go, what am I looking for? I know there's something really cool out there that I haven't heard of yet, but how am I going to find this? You know, yeah. So that to me is the biggest problem. We have the most technological advanced possibilities today, but it's like it's not focused. You know what I mean? Yeah, where there used to be a focus in the music industry back in the day.
Let's focus back on you for a second here. What are you doing right now? What have you been up to?
I have a couple of new bands. One of them is it's called Gunzo with Tracy Guns, who founding member of LA Guns, and actually he's the Guns in Guns N' Roses, you know. And we have a band called Gunzo. As a matter of fact, we're going to be playing here in Houston at the Concert Pub. Concert Pub? Is that what it's called? Concert Pub.
I don't know. Does anybody know Concert Pub?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, I know what you're talking about. Okay.
July 10th.
Okay,
Along with
okay.
the Bullet Boys. We're going to be playing together. And
Okay.
then with him, with Tracy, I have another band that I just joined. It's called Devil City Angels with Ricky Rocket on drums. And it's, excellent band. You know, so that record's coming out in about a month. I didn't get to play on the record because I just joined the band.
Yeah.
Eric Brittingham from Cinderella played on the record, and then he left the group, and they asked me if I wanted to do it, and I said, of course.
Oh, well, yeah. That works. All right. Yes, ma'am. Come to the mic, please. Take your time.
I will.
Please.
Hey. So I know you mostly play bass and stuff, but I think my question, you'll still be able to help me. So I just bought my first electric guitar, and so my question is, it's like, you know, a new birth or something, you know, learning to play music. What tips or advice or whatever could you give me to start exploring more sounds? Because I'm literally so ignorant. And just whatever.
Yeah. Great question. Thank you so much. Well, it's an instrument of communication. Most important thing, every time you have an instrument, whether it's the voice or a guitar or even drums, is having something to say. What's your message? Forget about really playing notes. I mean, I know guys that can up and down the neck and give you, 1,000 notes a second, but they might not have anything to say. They're not saying anything. They're just like, and go, okay, I hear you, but I don't know what you're saying, And then you can listen, you hear somebody, like let's say B.B. King, I got it. I completely understand what you're saying, so. But that is because he knows, or rest in peace, he knew how to communicate with the guitar. He's got something to say, and usually it will be in between the vocals. He'll sing something, and then he'll play the guitar, which actually kind of like backs up what he's already said with lyrics, or singing the melody. So the most important thing that the best advice I can give you is this. You have an acoustic guitar. Learn the fundamental chords. Nothing fancy. Then sing. write songs or to practice sing other people's songs. But there's plenty of tutorials on the internet about songwriting. Learn why those significant songs to you, why they work, the structure, musical structure. It's not very complicated, it's not rocket science. It's all the knowledge is available on the internet. I mean, I learn something new every day. I go online and I got certain websites that I go to and I take lessons. And sometimes you need to go back to the basics. Sometimes I go beyond that. But it's a journey. It really is. You're starting a certain journey with your instrument, becoming a musician. It's a lifelong journey. You know, treat it like that. Don't treat it like, well, if I don't get at this level musical skills in the next couple of months, I'm going to give it up. No, because there's always something new to learn, a new place to go to, something new to say, and a new way of saying. Yeah. Thank you. Hey, Riker.
Hi, Rudy.
How you doing?
Good.
Thank you for coming.
Rudy, you've had such an amazing career. You've seen all the different
Can you
changes.
get a little closer? Yeah.
And you've seen, Rudy, you've had an amazing career, and you've seen all the different changes in rock styles over the years. Where is rock headed? What's the future of rock? And how can we save it for people like Riker here?
I mean, you know what? Even back in the 70s or the 60s, nobody really knew where it was heading. We just embraced it. Oh, there's something new. Or we got, progressive rock. Oh, wow, there's a band like Yes just came out. I mean, you're like listening to the Beatles, and then all of a sudden you got Yes. Oh, wow, these guys are really great players, you know. And of course, even Yes, on their first few albums, did not sound like the same band as they became, you know, with Close to the Edge. Let's say, you know, there was always a musical progression to these individuals. They didn't get stuck in one sound or musical style. They always progress. I mean, if you listen to Led Zeppelin 1 and 2, and then fast forward to 4, or even Physical Graffiti, it sounds different. The musical skills, you know, have gone beyond what they were, you know, maybe even 3 or 4 years before, you know. So where is it headed? You know, it always heads in the right direction. It definitely does. You know, music, I think, is always a sign or a reflection of society. And as long as we're still around, music will still be around, and it will be an expression of what's happening today. I think music, even especially with urban music, it's more, it's almost like CNN. You know, it's the themes are about real. There's less fantasy, which is one thing that heavy metal, rock used to be heavy on. You know, a lot of not only fantasy but a lot of metaphors, and now it's almost like in your face, straight out. That's why there's so many bleeps.
But music ebbs and flows, like you're saying. I mean, it's needed for one thing at one time and then something else, and it changes to adjust to what's going on around the world. So when he brought up the word about, can you save it?
Can you save the world with music?
Can you just save music or save rock? Rock and roll. Because I see where you're coming from. It's
changing.
Yes.
It seems to be.
Save it.
Yeah.
You think it's lost? Or we're losing it?
I don't think it's lost, because I see, I come across the new generation. I mean, I do these events called Rock and Roll Fantasy Camp, which is not necessarily children. It's more for adult rock camp, but we do get kids. And I got to tell you, we get some 10-year-olds playing guitar that can act, and I've seen it. I've seen them stand on stage right next to Steve Vai, Eric Johnson, Joe Perry, and play. And all they can do is just look at these kids and go, oh my God, this is scary how good they are. Yeah. Yeah.
You foresee a future when you see those eyes.
Oh, absolutely. But then again, it's not as much as the significance of their musical skill is what they are going to be saying. Again, going back to Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan, to me, is one of the most significant artists of our last century. Because he had a lot to say. He had an incredible way of conveying messages and conveying almost like, again, CNN. Bob Dylan, today's Bob Dylan, could be your favorite hip hop artist, Jay-Z, whoever, It has that ability to have something to say and be very crystal clear.
It's also kind of scary to be able to say those messages, isn't it? Because you're basically exposing your soul to everyone out there. There may be daggers, anything thrown at you at any time, but you've got to be willing to accept that.
There's no other way to really connect with somebody than to be completely honest. Yeah.
One final question, Rudy. Riker wants to know if you'll play at his next birthday party.
Wants to know if you'll play at his next birthday party.
Walk on, Rudy.
Do we have any more questions? We have probably about 4 more minutes before we wraps up. Oh, come on up. Well, okay. We'll get both of them.
First of all, thanks for coming out. I really appreciate that. I was going to ask, like you were saying earlier, with that the bass guitar is actually an instrument for communication, and that it's all emotion, and that the fans connect with that, and that the present day now, a lot of artists, they go to studios and it's all pop and created. There's no emotion. And do you think rock and roll has died?
Oh no. First of all, before I answer the question, can I have one wish?
Sure.
Okay. Well, you being the genie, right?
Oh, man.
Dude, that went over your head.
Are you a genie or?
Oh, no.
Oh, I thought you were a genie. Okay.
From the Little Monsters, Maurice.
Okay, I thought you were the genie in Aladdin. So, Okay, I'm sorry. Okay. Again, I really don't think that just because we don't have radio to be blaring all the time, and when I say radio, I'm not talking about classic rock radio, because that's a format, and they're playing the same, Freebird, and a lot of the stuff is taped or whatever, it is formatted, so every 36 hours they play the same music, stuff like that. I'm talking about the radio that we used to listen to, that we used to play new music all the time, even though it's not terrestrial, there's some of that radio, whether it's Sirius XM or whatever, or even internet radio, so it's if you look for it, it will be there. So I really don't think that the lack of radio support, because what happened was the record companies started shrinking or disappearing because of less record sales due to piracy or sharing. Sharing. I like to call it sharing. Piracy is a very harsh word, but music sharing. Okay, so record companies started, well, we're not selling as many records, so we're going to fall. We're going to get rid of artists, and that's it. We're only going to concentrate on the music that is least shared, which turns out to be a lot of it is country. Country is very big. It sells a lot of records, and hip-hop sells a lot of records. Rock and roll records. I remember when I was a kid, I used to share. I used to make tapes with my buddies, and I go, oh, okay, I'll trade you this tape with that tape. But now is through the internet, and it's so much faster and easier, so we've been doing that for a while, And so just because there's lack of that support of an industry, it doesn't mean that the music is disappearing. You have to take into consideration that music was not the big business that it became during the 80s because of MTV, and that's what we call corporate rock. because the record companies really started concentrating on certain groups that had certain MTV appeal with certain video vixens, and so there was that evolution. But prior to that, I gotta tell you, the records that we think that actually sold so many records didn't really sell that many. Sgt. Pepper was not a multi-platinum record for a long time, even though it was the musical bar that was set by the Beatles. We recorded an album that cost us $32,000 on spec time with Quiet Riot. It was Mental Health. We did it on spec time, which means that we don't have a record deal. Yeah, it's a production deal. The record company, the production company went over to various record labels and say, listen, I got this band called Quiet Riot. Do you want to sign them? And at the time, it was Columbia Record, Sony. Got it? Yeah. And they say, yeah, well, we'll sign these guys. Maybe if they sell 50,000 copies, we'll get our money back. And eventually, it became the first debut album to reach #1, heavy metal debut album to reach #1 on Billboard. We didn't have any idea there was, that wasn't our goal. Well, we're going to make this record, it's going to be #1. You just do make the best record you can. And all of a sudden, you're selling. When we went to #1, we had to, knock Thriller out of the #1 spot for us to go to #1. So we had to sell 1 million in 1 week to go to #1. So, those figures, people got really used to, like, oh yeah, my record's gonna sell 5 million. Def Leppard, those guys are friends of mine. They spent so much time in the studio making a record. Back in the day, they would record 1 string at a time. Yeah, they would spend like 3 years making a record, right? 1 string. So instead of playing a chord, they would go king, king, king. Then they would come back and do king, king, king. So it would take them like forever to make a record. They used to have to sell 3 or 4 million records in order for them to start making money. Because it would cost them that much. So people were used to, oh yeah, our record is going to sell at least 10 million. Well, it doesn't happen anymore. Now we're back to reality. We're back basically to the way things were before MTV came in and everything just exploded, with the record buying public. So it looks dim, but now it's almost like it's gone back to the normal about what music is all about, the music industry.
One final question, sir.
Yes, sir. When you met Randy Rhoads, with him having a classical guitar background, what was your perception and the rest of the band's perception of someone coming in from a classical guitar background, kind of going into a rock and roll band? Was that something that was known or had happened before? Was that unique? What was the general take?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Okay, when I first started playing with Quiet Riot with Randy Rhoads in the band, Quiet Riot back in 1977, 78, they were more influenced by British glam rock, from Queen to Mott the Hoople to the Faces and so on. So Randy wasn't really as much. He would play classical, but he would mostly do that as when he taught music. But it wasn't really part of what Quiet Riot was on stage or even in recordings, because we were trying to get a record deal. And, as a matter of fact, Ozzy Osbourne had to fight with Jet Records in order to include D on the Blizzard of Oz album because they didn't want a classical piece in there. And Ozzy said, if my guitar player wants to put a classical, it's gonna happen. So that's how it happened. So it wasn't until later on, and as we toured together, he would go from city to city, and we would get off the bus in the morning, check into the hotel, and we go to breakfast, and he opened up the Yellow Pages. I wish he would have had Google then; it would have been even easier, and just Yellow Pages and go through the phone book and see whoever had the biggest ad for a music store that gave lessons, he would go there, you know, and most of the times he would wind up teaching the instructor because he hears Randy Rhoads coming in to take a lesson, and the guy's like freaking out. It's like, you know, so, and paying for it too, you know. So, yeah, Randy, thank God that there's a few recordings, you know, from Blizzard and Diary of a Madman with him being, you know, not only composing and performing classical music, because that set him as, okay, this guitar player, he's very classical influence. Now remember, those records were recorded before Tommy Aldridge and I joined the band. So you have about almost 2 years worth of Randy progressing as a musician. I mean, before he died, his classical playing was incredible. Unfortunately, it never got recorded, but I got to hear it, and I'll never forget it. Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
Final thought? Oh, no.
Yeah, we have to wrap up real quick.
Yeah.
You have
Well,
other
thank you
things.
so much for coming and for all the great questions. I really, really appreciate it. Really, really do.
We just appreciate you being with us. Rudy Sarzo, everyone. And wasn't he fantastic?
Magnificent.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much. And thank you so much for being with us here at Comicpalooza. We appreciate it. All right.
I could talk to you for hours.
Thank you. I could talk to you too. So, but listen, you guys have a great time. Thank you so much for stopping by and enjoy the rest of your time here at Comicpalooza. We appreciate you being here.